You may now put your mobiles on silent mode, please. Thank you. start कर दिया करो. So they have arrived amongst us. So we'll wait for everyone to settle down. Our chief guest is already here and other dignitaries are requested to kindly settle down. We are waiting for you all to settle down. So, a very good morning, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of APGA Satya and Swaran Group, Indian Obstetrics and Gynaecolgy Journal, and Walter Bushnell Healthcare Foundation, a center of excellence of the APGA Satya University, I extend a warm welcome to all our distinguished guests at the 10th IOG Dr. Satya Paul Awards 23-24, which are being presented today. We are indeed honored to have amongst us a galaxy of esteemed doctors and other dignitaries from across the country and abroad, along with the members of APJ Satya family. I would like to inform all of you that the entire proceedings of today's oration lecture and awards are being broadcast live on IOG Facebook page. In fact, many of our well-wishers both from India and abroad, have already logged in, and a hearty welcome to them as well. It's a great privilege to extend a warm welcome to our chief guest, Dr. Ricardo Aziz, Professor Obs and Gynae Medicine and Healthcare Organization and Policy, Schools of Medicine and Public Health, University of Alabama at Birmingham, US. He is also the past CEO of American Society for Reproductive Medicine. A special welcome for Mrs. Sushma Paul Barlia, Chairman, APJ Satya and Swaran Group, Dr. J.B. Sharma, Editor-in-Chief, IOG Journal, for gracing the event with their gracious presence. Our heartfelt thanks to Mr. Nishant Barlia. Mr. Aditya Barlia will be joining us soon, and Dr. Neha Barlia, co-promoters, APJ Satya and Swaran Group, who are also here with us this morning. The IOG Dr. Satyapal Awards and Oration Lecture have been instituted in the fond memory of Dr. Satyapal, eminent industrialist, educationist, philanthropist, freedom fighter, and the inspiration behind all our institutions. The awards to be presented today would be acknowledging excellence among members of the medical fraternity who have contributed papers to the reputed Indian Obs and Gynae Journal. So once again, I welcome you all to the IOG Dr. Satyapal 23-24 Awards. Let's now light the auspicious ceremonial lamp to inaugurate today's special function. To do the honors, may I request Dr. Ricardo Aziz, Mrs. Sushma Paul Barlia, Mr. Nishant Barlia, and Dr. Neha Barlia, along with Dr. J.B. Sharma, to do the honors and light the ceremonial lamp.
विघ्ननाशकरं देवं हेरम्बं प्रणमाम्यहम् वक्रतुण्ड महाकाय सूर्यकोटि समप्रभा निर्विघ्नं कुरु मे देव सर्वकार्येषु सर्वदा ॐ गं गणपतये नमः ॐ गं गणपतये नमः ॐ गं गणपतये नमः ॐ गं गणपतये नमः
May I now request Dr. Ricardo Aziz, Mrs. Sushma Paul Barlia, and Dr. J.B. Sharma to kindly grace the dais. May I now request Mrs. Sushma Paul Berlia, daughter of late Dr. Satya Paul, to do the Deep Prajwalan. Madam Berlia, to do the Deep Prajwalan, please. Nature is said to be the mother of all life on earth. Today, we'd like to pay obeisance to her benevolence by presenting green certificates to our esteemed dignitaries present on the dais. These green certificates symbolize the green saplings to be planted across the APJ Satya campus in honor of each of our dignitaries. Dr. Ricardo Aziz, Mrs. Sushma Paul Berlia, and Dr. J.B. Sharma. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Satya Paul, an eminent industrialist, educationist, freedom fighter, and philanthropist, was a leader par excellence and a legend of our times. He was one of the principal architects of our nation's emergence as a self-reliant, industrial and educational superpower founded on the strength of Indian capability and enterprise. He is a prime inspiration of the APJ Satya and Swaran Group, the visionary architect of APJ Education and the founder, chancellor of APJ Satya University. Dr. Satya Paul was a man who overcame all odds to become one of the most respected men of this nation. We shall now showcase a short film on Dr. Satya Paul, in whose fond remembrance these awards have been instituted.
मा फलेषु कदाचन मा कर्मफलहेतुर्भो मा ते संगोऽस्त्वविकर्मणि.
Eminent industrialist, educationist, freedom fighter, and philanthropist, Dr. Satya Paul founded the APJ Satya and Swaran Group that has achieved an iconic status in independent India. The group is known as a trusted symbol of quality and excellence in the country's industrial landscape. A pioneering visionary with a deep commitment to society, Dr. Paul remained the inspiration and the guiding force behind the APJ Education Society, which he established in 1967. Today, the society provides quality education from pre-primary to doctoral levels to over 32,000 students through 29 educational institutions. Dr. Satya Paul was also the founder chancellor of the APJ Satya University, India's first liberal arts university. APJ Satya University aims to produce young Renaissance men and women who would be leaders of today and tomorrow. Born on the 4th of October in the year 1919, he surged ahead and faced all the challenges with firm determination. A brilliant scholar, Dr. Satya Paul was a university gold medalist in mathematics in undivided Punjab. During the course of the independence struggle in India, he became quite involved as a freedom fighter. As a result of his active participation, He was imprisoned by the British during the famous Quit India movement. Dr. Satyapal lost his parents at a very young age, but he took up the responsibilities of taking care of his entire family and running the family business. Under his inspirational leadership, the APJ Satya and Swaran Group has become one of the most reputed corporate houses of the country. Apart from its large social commitment to education, it is actively participating in other business enterprises as well. Throughout his long and illustrious life, Dr. Satyapal held responsible positions reflecting his versatility, his leadership, and his eminence. Numerous awards and honors were bestowed upon Dr. Satyapal, though he never desired any monuments for himself. Dr. Satyapal's humility, simplicity, and affection impressed one and all. The happiest moments of his life were spent with children. He made us believe that it is not a disgrace if dreams remained unfulfilled, but it is a disgrace if we have no dreams at all. A true Karma Yogi, Dr. Satyapal retained his zeal for hard work even during his advanced age and remained keenly involved in the management of the APJ institutions. Active till the very end, he departed from the world peacefully on the 7th of June 2010 while preparing to leave for office. His daughter, Sushma Paul Barlia, together with her husband, Vijay Barlia, and their children, Nishant, Aditya, and Neha, carry forward the legacy of excellence, trust, and growth of the group. You are a spiritual being. You are energy, and energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes from one form to another. Therefore, the pure essence of you has always been and will always be with us.
That was truly inspiring. Dr. Satyapal's life is a glorious example of a true Karma Yogi, a source of great inspiration for today's generation. Carrying forward the legacy of Dr. Satyapal is his daughter and the only child, Madam Sushma Paul Barlia. A multi-dimensional personality, Mrs. Barlia is a leading entrepreneur, industrialist, and educationist who has devoted her life to nation building with global footprints. She is a humanitarian, a worthy daughter, a caring spouse, a nurturing mother, an indulgent grandmother, but above all, an alchemist who performs all her roles with great ease to create a shining and inspiring story. Mrs. Barlia is the chairman, APJ Satya and Swaran Group, an international diversified conglomerate of businesses with activities in pharmaceuticals and chemicals, real estate and development, international trading and distribution, strategic investments, and emerging businesses such as publishing and media. She is the Chancellor of the UGC-recognized APJ Satya University, India's first industry-centric technology and liberal arts university, and Chairman APJ Education, which runs 26 educational institutions, schools, and higher education institutions across the country, including the APJ Satya University. Mrs. Barlia was the first woman to lead a multi-state apex Chamber of Commerce in India, serving as the president of the PhD CCI in 2005-2006. She was the first woman in India to lead her own pharmaceutical company when not yet 30, and was the first woman entrepreneur of a major educational group in India. Mrs. Barlia is a former member of the Board of Governors, IIT Roorkee, and former chairperson, Board of Governors, NIT Jalandhar. Mrs. Barlia is the chairman, ASSOCHAM, National Council on Business Facilitation and Global Competitiveness, and is a member of the National Management Committees of ASSOCHAM and FICCI. In 1995, Mrs. Barlia represented India at the UN World Social Summit at Copenhagen and delivered the keynote address on the role of women at the workplace. She delivered a special address in the House of Lords, UK, at the 2022-2023 London Global Convention on Corporate Governance and Sustainability. A humanitarian to the core, Mrs. Sushma Paul Barlia has always championed such causes as working for the physically challenged, economically weaker sections of society, and empowerment of women. Mrs. Barlia has won numerous awards and accolades for her contribution towards academia and industry. These include felicitations by Skilltree Knowledge Consortium and Mahatma Gandhi Samman at the House of Commons London, Hall of Fame Award by Asian Leadership Awards Dubai, Udyog Ratan Award, Lifetime Achievement Award for Promoting Education for Social Cause by ASSOCHAM, ET Inspiring Entrepreneur of India and Most Promising Business Leaders of Asia, Lifetime Achievement Award for Promoting Education for Social Cause, and many, many more. Rotary Club of Delhi Premier felicitated Mrs. Barlia as a COVID warrior for her philanthropic endeavors and extraordinary contribution to help those in need during the COVID-19 pandemic. She was also conferred with Lifetime Achievement Award promoting education for the social cause at Digital Education Summit by Universal Mentors Association. She was felicitated with the legendary Shiromani Award for Excellence in Education at the NRI World Summit 22 in United Kingdom. She has received Lifetime Achievement Women Achievers Award 23 in acknowledgement of her exemplary work and contribution for women in various fields like business, education, healthcare, social work, etc. by Z News and DNA in March 23. She was awarded as Distinguished Fellow of IOD for the year 23 for her outstanding contribution to public welfare and public policy, women empowerment, and social inclusion, among many more recognitions. Mrs. Barlia has abiding interests beyond the realm of work. She is a voracious reader and loves to travel to new destinations. She is highly reflective, and her spiritual pursuits are intertwined in her busy schedules. Indeed, she is as much focused on achieving as she is on the joy of living and giving. I now request Madam Sushma Paul Barlia to address the gathering.
Table paper. I start at always with this doha. Guru Gobind dau khade, Guru Gobind dau khade kake lagu paye. My God and my Guru both are standing before me. Whose feet should I touch first? Guru Gobind dau khade kake lagu paye. Balihari Guru aapne Gobind diyo bataye. My God and my Guru both are standing before me. Whose feet should I touch first? I commence by touching the feet of my Guru, my father, our founder, Dr. Satya Paul, as it is only through him that I have truly learned the meaning of life and how to live that life. It is through him that I have come to know God. In fact, I have been very reflective the last few months because I had the opportunity to journey this summer to Amarnath. And I was thinking that many of the values, and by the way, this is why we celebrate his life, these awards that have been instituted in his honor and the oration lecture, is not so much to just remember a man who was, after all, an ordinary man like any of us here. What distinguished him from so many others is the fact that an ordinary man rose to extraordinary heights. And he was somebody who truly believed that in each one of us is the spark which can take us towards those extraordinary heights. In fact, it was that vision and mission that he had set up the APJ institutions. But when I was thinking, and the celebration that we do therefore is not as much to remember him, though he is worth remembering, his life is worth remembering, but more to celebrate the values that he stood for, the immortal values that we would do well to remind ourselves every moment of our lives. So, on this journey to Amarnath, it doesn't matter. This was the pilgrimage to Amarnath. It could be a pilgrimage to anywhere or anything which is truly important to us. This is something I had been hearing about. For some reason, I thought I would have wanted to go, but I never really attempted till this very summer, because somehow I thought it was too difficult, it was too dangerous, so I didn't even want to think about it or commit myself to doing it. And then I don't know from where, suddenly arose the spark that I want to go. Maybe because I'm 64, so I can take more chances perhaps. But in any case, I think part of the challenge really was that I had a rib injury. I had 2 rib fractures about a couple of years ago, and they had just healed. So I wasn't too sure how, they would last me during the journey. And it still is, despite a lot of improvements that have been made on that path, a difficult journey. As things would happen when we were about to go, and Dinesh Rai ji is here, he was kind enough to enable us in this journey, and we had gone together. But as we were planning to go and all set to go, suddenly there were huge torrential rains and snowfall all over Srinagar and the higher mountains and below. So all roads were cut off to the valley. Just the flights were taking off at that point in time. And literally everybody that I knew was trying to tell me, why are you trying to go? Because the pilgrimage has been halted and you won't be able to go there. So I thought about it and I said, yes, it's true that might happen. But since I've had this spark to go there, I wish to go there. So much we have planned. There's a lot of things, medical, this, that, all of it. So, I'm going to go there till the last possible point that I can manage to go. And if it is not to be, it's not to be. We'll come back another year. So we landed in Srinagar. Even when we were going from Srinagar to Pahalgam, all the roads were open, but it had still been raining and roads were still blocked to go up from Jammu to Srinagar at that time. So we still were not sure what was going to happen. But the next day, when we were about to travel, and mind you, we did take helicopter for part of the journey. I was very keen to try to walk some part of it, but really partly because I very soon realized that it would be an impossibility to be able to walk and then to be able to come back the same day, and we were together as a team. So the helicopter took off. The reason I'm mentioning the helicopter is if weather was not okay, helicopter wouldn't have taken off anyway. I should also mention I'm very scared of riding in helicopters, particularly in mountains. So innately I had to also overcome that particular fear. I'm getting better at it, but it's still there. So we got into the helicopter, beautiful day, sun was shining, and we managed to get there. When I say I did not walk and we took that palki, it doesn't mean that it wasn't horrible on the back. I need to put that disclaimer here. It was probably worse on the back. But I didn't realize this till I had come back and much later, and by then it didn't matter, right? So we went there. And as we went nearer and nearer to that cave, much of the path was extremely narrow, single file. A lot of times there were no boundaries or fences over there. People were coming down, we were going up, and horses, palkiwalas, people walking. And since there had been some landslides and just the day before there had been raining and snowfall and all of it, the path was even much more treacherous than it could have been. But as we went near to the cave, and you went down and there was some walking we had to do. And as I stood before that cave where the ling is inside, suddenly I felt all the tiredness going away. I suddenly felt in a different world. And I just recall when I closed my eyes, just tears flowing down my face, silent tears. And in that moment I felt that I had been here before. This was home. I felt a silence and stillness which was very strange because there were a lot of people around, both outside and within me. And then I realized that what I had traveled all this way to experience, to see, to have a darshan, has of course already, always been inside as well. It's just maybe that I had to travel all this way to be able to truly experience that. It's not that we don't hear about it or that we don't know about it, but just that transcending experience, that all that we seek in our lives, and whatever we seek in our lives, no matter by what name we call it, we can call it wealth, we can call it peace, we can call it family harmony, a number of names depending on what our aspirations are. But at the end of the day, the ultimate goal of wanting what we want is, after all, happiness. That's why we want it. Why else would we want it? Because we believe that whatever we are chasing, whatever we are aspiring for, whatever it is that we truly want, will lead us to happiness. But happiness is always there. It's just that we don't know about it. And in that moment, there was nothing else. The outside, the inside, it was all the same. Everything was just the same. There was only one. The reason that I mention this is that I, for the first time perhaps, truly understood that what was it about Dr. Satya Paul that was so remarkable, apart from the other values which I will talk about. And that was, no matter what happened in life, there were innumerable challenges that he faced. Some of you here already know that when he was born, he had polio as a very young child. Family was not very well off, small business of making buckets. How small we can understand when I say they couldn't afford electricity in those days. So most of his early education was conducted with the help of a lantern at home, right? So the challenge of the crutches. Anyway, there was no polio corrective surgery readily available in India at that time. But anyway, he wouldn't have been able to afford it either. And the challenge of not being born in a very affluent or not even a reasonably affluent family. Eldest of 7 brothers and sisters, lost his mother when the last child was born at childbirth. So on his shoulders, along with his younger sister, fell the responsibility of also helping to raise the family. But despite all of this, it didn't deter him. In fact, he was very happily also playing hockey at school. He was the chosen goalkeeper because, as he says, he had the dual advantage of having 2 crutches to be able to stave off the ball. So, as I mentioned to some earlier, that clearly those days rules were a little more flexible. So, anyway, but he became very passionate about mathematics. And you know, he kept on sharing with me some of the teachers that truly inspired him. And I still remember his talking about Master Jagannath, who was his maths teacher and who later on, and who really gave him that love, that knowledge, the foundation for mathematics, which eventually led him to do his MA mathematics. And he was in fact gold medalist in almost entire of North India at that time. And that time Pakistan was part of India, right? So at that point, and then he's also been fondly talking of Professor Carr, by the way, who taught him in college, who was his English professor. And he says that, you know, the way he would teach in a class was unforgettable. It would remain in his memory so many years down the decades when he shared them with me. And you can imagine the passion with which he shared, that I still remember their names and the fact that he was so inspired by them. The reason I'm mentioning this, that let's not underestimate the importance of the footprints that we leave in the lives of people around us, and particularly when we are in ability to teach, to train, and to groom. So, mathematics, then he, as I said, he did his bachelor's in Punjab, in Jalandhar, that's where he was born. And then he went to Lahore, where he did his MA mathematics. He was very much fond of maths, very much educationist at heart. So he really wanted to teach. And then when he came back to his home, he went to the college in Jalandhar, wanting to take a job as a professor, which he was refused because he was physically challenged. He was still walking with crutches at that time. It's an irony of fate that later on he went on to become the chairman of the board of governors of college much later in life. So he went back to the family business. He also took a lot of part in the freedom movement of that time, 1942 Quit India movement. He was put in jail with many of the leading leaders of independence at that time. And he always tells me that's when he lost all fear, because they were planning to send him off to Andaman Nicobar, since he was refusing to disclose the names of the other people who were involved with him in distributing seditious literature at that time. And it was only the general amnesty which came around that time that saved him from being sent over there, because that would have been certain death for sure. But he lost all fear, because he said, having faced the thought of death and being in jail in that way, what is the worst than that can happen in life? And so when he came out, he lost his father soon after. But by then, he had started looking into the business. He was able to get his footprints into the steel business. Those days, everything was licensed. So in order to produce anything or to buy raw materials and other things, you had to get permission from the government. But because I suppose he was well educated and he could put forth his case properly, he was able to get his first license. That was his first break, started with trading, went on to manufacturing. The rest is sort of history. And very soon, he ended up building the kind of industrial empire we are talking about. But of course, I'm putting it in two lines. It's not that simple. Life is up and down. If you're going to climb up a mountain and trying to reach higher, it's not a straight journey. We have to take curves around the mountain, we have to go down valleys, we have to climb up smaller hills, and then we climb up larger hills and higher hills and so on. So it was a journey, but it was a journey where he never forgot his passion for education. And the fact that in those days there was hardly any good educational institutions around, handful of Catholic schools and some institutions by Arya Samaj. In fact, when I went back to see the school where he was studying in his childhood in Jalandhar, much of it still remains unchanged. The only difference is now they have tables and chairs in the classroom. Those days they used to sit on the floor. They didn't even have notebooks to write on. They had something called the takht on which they would write, then they would try to wipe it off and then write again. And but what really struck me was, there were these steep stairs going upstairs to the different floors in the school, and the height of each step was very high, very narrow steps, no railings on the side. And I was just thinking to myself, as I saw children rushing up and down those steps in the school, that this boy in those times was going with his crutches, step by step up those stairs and down the stairs in all this melee. Look at the grit, the determination and the courage and the self-confidence that he exhibited. And that is how he faced so many adversities of his life. If I were to look at his life, I take away, and this is something he's always said, dare to dream. The only person who's limiting from your reaching higher and higher heights is you yourself. We limit ourselves by feeling that we can't do more. So dare to dream, dream. And then believe in yourself, very important. Okay, I have dreamt, but I'm very unconfident. People make me feel maybe, you can't do it. But it's not really people, it's me. Because I'm listening to them and I'm believing that I can't do it. So the only person limiting myself is me. Believing in myself will make us fearless. Be fearless. It doesn't matter. What is the worst that can happen in our lives? Think of that and then go ahead. And focus with discipline, self-effort. There is no substitute for self-effort. Of course, we all know that. We are all achievers here in this hall. High achievers, achieving, potential achievers, all achievers. We understand that very well. And those are the things today that we need to remember more than at any time. So no matter what adversities he faced, no matter what challenges he faced, there's always a beautiful smile on his face. Anybody you talk to who knew him at that time, whenever they would meet him, no matter what was going on in his life or his business or anything else, he had this lovely smile, which brought so much joy to anybody who was with him at that time. And I'm just connecting back to the feeling I had at Amarnath, that no matter what is going on in your life, joyous moments, adversities, no matter what, of course, participating with full gusto, feeling all the emotions in all its entirety, and yet slipping off you as if you are waterproof. So what he was outwards, he was also that much inwards. While he was living a full life in all its dimensions, he was really not there either. He was also within himself, because it was all one to him. And he could be smiling. So This was something I thought I would like to share with you. And the fact that the reason that we talk about him, that we commemorate him, is that he truly believed and lived his life through these values. So, apart from this, he's always believed. We only know about the educational institutions and other work that we see and know that he has inspired and put into place and continues to inspire us. But he made many contributions. In fact, he was on the board of governors of a lot of health care institutions, the hospitals in Jalandhar, in all other places, as part of Rotary, as part of child welfare. He made a lot of work for TB patients, polio patients, and many scholarships were instituted. But those were only the visible part. There was a huge invisible part that he contributed to people, to anybody needing help with their education. Somebody wanted to go set up a business with seed capital, which nobody even knew or knows as much, that what is it that he truly did. It was only when he passed away that for almost a year I had people coming in from all walks of life, from all parts of the country, sometimes even from international destinations, coming to condole his passing away. I didn't even know them, but they wanted to come and they wanted to talk about him, and they wanted to share the difference that he had made in his lives. Some of those had not even known that the scholarships that they were receiving in the different institutions had actually been given by him anonymously. Today we talk about CSR, but in those days he truly believed that the running of an enterprise is not just making of income or making money. Running of an enterprise is a creation of wealth, and that wealth is not meant just for you and your family and the generations to come. Of course, they should also be partake, but that creation of wealth is meant for all who are involved in that process and in whose lives you could make that difference. So, this is why we thought we needed to set up, out of the very many ways we try to remember the values that he stood for, the IOG Dr. Satya Paul Oration Lecture and the awards. We are thankful to Dr. J.B. Sharma and all the others who have helped us and enabled us, and each one of you here who have been supporting us through this journey over the years, so that we together can remember some of those values. Together we can commemorate the spirit of giving and the healthcare, particularly for women and children, which cause he was always very, very deeply concerned about. His work for the girl child is commendable. Without getting it into any details, I think the best thing I can say is right till I was an adult, I never realized that I should feel differently just because I'm a girl or just because I'm a woman. He always encouraged me to believe that there is nothing in the world I cannot do if I decide to do it. And I think this is the belief we all need to carry in our hearts. We are already extraordinary in very many ways, all of us who are assembled here today. What I think we need to add to that mix is the values that I'm sure have upheld many of us till now, but to remember those every moment and take them forward in our lives. And one more thing. This morning, Dr. Nagpal, I don't know where she is, but she reminded me of something very important, and that is gratitude. Many of us spend far too much time thinking about what we don't have, what people owe us, what is missing in our lives. how much time do we take every day to think of how much we already have? How much is it that we have to be grateful for? So I would just like to say a heartfelt thanks to each one of you. And I start with what I should have started with, brothers and sisters. Thank you so much. All of you have come from all different parts of the country, nooks and corners of Delhi, left your busy practices and joined us here today for this very special occasion. I also would like to extend my sincere thank you to Dr. Ricardo Aziz for accepting our invitation and gracing the occasion and delivering the oration lecture. I'm not even going to attempt to introduce him for two reasons. One, because anyway he will get his formal introduction, and it's not something I can summarize in a few lines. I can only share that in the last few days I had the privilege of having dinner with him. We spent almost 3-4 hours together. We don't know where time flew by. Of course, his gracious wife also is here with him and has accompanied him here. She's an architect and an interior designer. So I can only tell you one thing. The many multiple dimensions to his personality completely awed me. He's from Uruguay, went to the US, also has been in Puerto Rico, where he was sharing with us that he's actually built and constructed his home, the family home, with his own hands, along with his father and brother. Then, of course, he was a surgeon, a gynae and obs surgeon, of course, particularly doing a lot of endometrial surgeries, which are, of course, very close to my heart. And then he's been an administrator, he's been the head of public health institutions, nominated by the governor, and his research publications, I don't think I should even try to attempt to share with the medical profession, all the doctors here, because clearly you would know much more about it than I would. But I can only say that I found in him the kind of values which we have been talking about. And I also, in fact, I asked him that, look, what is the secret of your ability to be able to manage all that you do at the same time? He still hasn't shared that, though. But we are delighted, we are honored that you could join us here today on this very special occasion. And since we are all achievers here, I would like to leave us with this beautiful couplet, one of the many couplets my father used to love and recite. And it stems off from all that we have been talking today. अगर देखना है मेरी उड़ान को, अगर देखना है मेरी उड़ान को, ज़रा और ऊंचा कर दो, ज़रा और ऊंचा कर दो आसमान को. If you really want to see my true flight as a bird, as an eagle into the skies, keep making the sky higher and higher. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for your very inspiring address. Ladies and gentlemen, we also have amongst us Mr. Nishan Barlia, eldest grandson of Dr. Satyapal and son of Mrs. Sushma Paul Barlia and Mr. Vijay Barlia. Mr. Nishan Barlia is co-promoter, APG Satya and Swaran Group, a leading industrial house with diversified businesses in varied sectors. He also serves as General Secretary of APG Education and is Pro-Chancellor APG Satya University. He is an alumnus of Stanford University, USA and Harvard Business School, USA. Mr. Nishan Barlia is principally involved in the group's pharmaceutical vertical comprising the flagship companies Water Bushnell, Martin & Harris and ASG Biochem. Mr. Nishan Barlia is Chair of Delhi and NCR Committees of PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry. I now request him to address the august gathering.
Thank you for the kind introduction. A very good morning and a warm welcome to all respective dignitaries, Madam Burlia, esteemed doctors, ladies and gentlemen. It's such a pleasure to have all of you with us here today. I'm also very delighted that a very special person with us is today, an esteemed luminary, not only in the realm of gynecology and reproductive medicine, but also a nationally and internationally recognized leader in higher education, Dr. Ricardo Aziz. So I extend a very hearty and very special welcome to Dr. Ricardo Aziz. Medicine has played a very fundamental role in our family. I think Madam Burlia had shared about my late grandfather's journey and particularly with polio. We never thought of him as somebody who was afflicted with any type of limitation. But I still remember hearing from him and more from my late grandmother the journey he had many years after he had success to go to Boston Mass General Hospital to have polio-corrective surgery. A procedure later on which of course became so common in our country, which he himself championed and funded so many. But it made such a fundamental difference to him and to our family. And it is something I know, a journey many of you see every day as such. In many ways, APJ, we celebrated in 2022, 50 years of APJ education. And it was really a tremendous celebration as such for us. And I think for many of the senior faculty here from so many fields, the last 50 plus years really has been a journey in access and democratization of the best of global education and the best of global care. Certainly there are many challenges which remain. In fact, I was heartened, Dr. Aziz was sharing that even in the US today, there still remain challenges of access and what we call affordability. But that is something which I think will be there for all ecosystems everywhere in the world. But just perhaps, we are now at an inflection point after so much great work done in this common project by so many of our senior faculty here, that now really it is time for us to embrace really moving to the frontiers of science and innovation. We're already seeing so many leading journals coming out of our country. We're already seeing leading citations, a lot of great research projects, but we're just at the cusp. And if there's one thing I learned from my late grandfather, it's not so few words I would say, is that institutions are built really, if I could put it this way, by thousands, by laying, not in a day, but by laying thousands of bricks by hundreds of people over decades. And so in many ways, today is a celebration of our leaders in science, but is also a one step in that journey of what we hope all of us are able to achieve in our part of the world in the years and decades to come. So in that sense, for this celebration, thank you for coming all the way. We have good friends, colleagues, family here from the north, from Kashmir, from Nepal, from the east, as far as in Manipur. We have from the west, from Gujarat, from Tamil Nadu. We also have colleagues and faculty joining in for the first time from Kenya, Uganda, Mauritius, and of course through our digital broadcast all over the world. So thank you very much. We're very blessed to welcome you here. And thank you for giving us your time and your thoughts and your conversations. And we look forward to walk together in this journey together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the IOG Journal has emerged as one of the most sought-after publications among the medical fraternity, and we are pleased to have Dr. J.B. Sharma, Editor-in-Chief of the journal, amongst us today. Dr. Sharma is Professor in the Department of Obs and Gynae, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. He specializes in key gynecological areas, including urogynecology, genital tuberculosis, and medical disorders in pregnancy. He has served as professor at the Maulana Azad Medical College and has been associated with various hospitals in the UK. Dr. J.P. Sharma has over 400 publications in indexed and non-indexed national and international journals. He has presented over 200 papers in various conferences and has also chaired many sessions. He is the chairperson of Gynaecolgy Fogsy Society and has been awarded many times by the Royal College of Obs and Gynae, London, and has won the Indian Council of Medical Research Award on his work on anemia during pregnancy. He was awarded the Honorable Dr. B.C. Roy Award for Research in 2015 by the President of India and has also won Dr. Labsetwar Award for his research in genital TB. He has also received the Fogsy Late Professor Kutty Lifetime Achievement Award in 64th AICOG. Recently, he also received Dr. T.C. Anand Kumar Memorial Oration Gold Medal Award presented in ISSRF 2022 and Dr. Prabha Mehra Oration on SUT in KGMU, Lucknow in 23. I now request Dr. Sharma to share his editorial insights on the IOG Journal.
Yeah, thank you very much for the kind introduction. So, respected Madam Sushma Pal Barlia, Chairman of APJ School and Chancellor of APJ School, Professor Ricardo Aziz, Professor of and Gynae Medicine, Healthcare Organization and Policy, School of Medicine, Public Health, University of Alabama at Birmingham, and the orator for this prestigious conference today, and Dr. Nishant Barlia, Neha Barlia, and Mrs. Cynthia here. I especially welcome you, ma'am, to India. And of course, we have past presidents, and Madam Dr. Nandita, Dr. Pai, Malhotra, both are there, and Lieutenant General Kochar, sir, thanks for coming. And I can't name all of them, but Dr. Professor Nirja Batla, our head of the department, and all esteemed delegates coming as high from the Northeast also. Okay. So basically, I'm very delighted to share the details of Indian Obs and Gynae Journal, which was first started January 2011, so almost now 13-14 years, as a new specialty journal in Obs and Gynae and infertility. So there was a need to find a platform for budding obstetricians and gynecologists. Especially my target was mainly young researchers, like they didn't find space in proper journals. So it is published quarterly. It carries original research studies, review articles, case reports, book reviews, letter to editor, and other scientific information in the field of Obs, Gynae, infertility, and all subspecialties of Obs and Gynae. So it caters to basically different subspecialties like maternal fetal medicine, assisted reproduction, reproductive endocrinology, Gynae onco, urogynae, minimal invasive gynae, and other subspecialties which are coming up in the specialty. And it solicits receives articles from these broad categories in Obs and Gynae, and from other branches of medicine also, like we get articles from dentistry, because pregnancy can happen in any medical condition. So we get articles on diabetes from diabetologists, on medical disorders in pregnancy from other specialty, dental condition in pregnancy, like that. So they can also contribute article to us, and we get, like Dr. Mona is here, they also contribute article from reproductive biology to us. And all the articles are expected to be written in accordance to Vancouver style, uniform requirement for manuscripts submitted to biomedical journals, and the time between submission and acceptance and publication is minimized by getting the articles promptly reviewed, and so we send the article back to authors for correction very promptly. The journal is published by APJ Satya Publishing Private Limited, and thanks to Madam Barlia for this, but it's totally, scientific content of the journal is concerned, it's totally free of any influence from anybody. So I'm delighted that performance of the journal has been well accepted by fraternity, and we keep getting letters, emails from them. They enthusiastically wait for the next issue of the journal, and physicians, surgeons, and even dental surgeons are also sending article to us. So I wish to thank all the international and national editorial board members and reviewers who work hard and selflessly for the journal by contributing and reviewing quality articles. And most important, our esteemed readers, without whom the journal would not have been successful. And I proudly say that the journal is recently indexed with UGC Care. It is already indexed with ABESCO of USA and Google Scholar of USA. We are ultimately aiming to get it published in, indexed with PubMed, but we have to work harder for that. And all the previous issues of the journal, right from the beginning, are available on these databases. And UGC Care has taken the responsibility of preparing UGC Care reference list of quality journals. The objective is to promote quality research and academic integrity and publication. And ABESCO provides a complete and optimized research solution comprised of e-journals, e-books, and research database. Google Scholar provides a simple way to broadly search for scholarly literature. So all our issues are available online starting from the beginning. And ultimately our target is to get in PubMed. So I need help from all of you by sending quality articles to us, and also the esteemed editorial board member by reviewing the article on time. So I'm particularly thankful to APJ Satya Publishing Group, especially Madam Sushma Pal Barlia, Nishant Barlia, Aditya and Neha. And I'm thankful to Manju Purohit also, and Vishal Wahane, and their desk editor of the journal. And I encourage researchers to submit high quality manuscript to the IOG describing their original clinical research findings and robust literature review that are of current academic interest, reports novel diagnostic paradigms, or summarize their treatment experiences to improve the quality of IOG further. And as you can see, we are here, so IOG Awards are also being given. So good quality articles are automatically, reviewed by 3 jury members, 2 from India, 1 international, and then the marks are given. Dr. Pratap Kumar, I thank him for especially, contributing, Dr. Sunita Malik and all, Anupama Bahadur and Dr. Jagdish Gandhi and international this thing. So the award is being given to them, you will see today. So that is also just a token of appreciation to them, so that they can submit quality article to us. So thank you very much for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. I now request Dr. Ricardo Aziz to present green certificates to the editorial board members of the IOG Journal and the eminent personalities of Obs and Gynae fraternity. I also request Madam Barlia to present the book, Magic of Thinking Big, a step-by-step approach to positive thoughts by turning on your creative powers. That's the name of the book. To them, I would also request Mr. Nishant Barlia and Dr. Neha Barlia to kindly join us on stage for the same. I would also request all the editorial board members later on to stay on the stage for the group photograph. I'll be reading out their names one by one in the beginning. We begin with Dr. Sunita Malik. Coming up on stage is Dr. Sunita Malik. Dr. Pratap Kumar. Dr. Mridubhasini Govindarajan. Dr. Anju Soni. Dr. Anju Soni. Dr. Anita Singh. Dr. S.N. Basu. Dr. Brajbala Tiwari. Dr. Naina H. Patel. Dr. Neerja Bhatia. Dr.
So can we? Yeah. Yes, madam. Yeah, no, because this award has to be given only in person. Okay. So Dr. Neerja Batla has contributed immensely to Gynae-Onco. So the first award has been started this year. So there can't be more suitable person than her. And she has been awarded from Lyon, France, madam, the first ever this IORC award. So that is the most prestigious award she has got. So thank you, madam, for accepting our. So can we get the award for Dr. Neerja Batla and then Madam Dr. Yes, thank you.
So till the time we get the award, let's just present it to
Okay,
others.
Okay, fine. Yeah, fine.
Dr. Jaideep Malhotra.
Yeah. Dr. Jaideep Malhotra, Madam, if you. Okay. Yeah, okay. Dr. Niharika can come. Thank you.
So Dr. Niharika is coming up on her behalf.
Okay, she will come.
Dr. Nandita Palshetkar.
Dr. Nandita, Madam. Dr. Nandita Palshetkar has been our former president and big name in IVF, and owner of all D.Y. Patil's medical colleges of the country. And like Dr. Satya Paul, her father, Dr. Patil, has also contributed immensely to, I think, to. Yes, madam. Please welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Yes, madam. Educationist, great educationist, and.
Dr. Rishikesh Pai.
So, Dr. Rishikesh Pai, all of you know, sir, he has just completed his tenure of 1 year of president of FOXY, and they are both, he and madam, are chairperson for the AICOG next year. So, sir has contributed immensely to Obs and Gynae and world over known, and also senior person in FIGO. And sir is a great celebrity, real Jija of Poonam Dhillon ma'am. Okay, thank you. So we could meet so many actresses because of his company. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And now Dr. Narendra Malhotra. Dr. Narendra
Nina, you can
Malhotra.
also join, please. You will be getting award, of course, soon. Thank you.
Dr. Meenu Malhotra.
Dr. Nina Malhotra.
Meena Malhotra, sorry.
Yeah. Dr. Nina is current professor and head Department of Obs and Gynae at AIMS, and she has contributed immensely in the field of IVF and infertility.
And as Dr. J.B. Sharma just announced that Dr. Neerja Bhatla has to go somewhere urgently, so we will now present her the Excellence Award in Gynecological Oncology Award, which is being awarded to her, who's been tirelessly working for the last 35 years to eliminate cervical cancer. Please put your hands together for Dr. Neerja Bhatla, immediate past HOD of Department of Obs and Gynae, AIMS, New Delhi. She is the head of WHO Collaborating Center for Cervical Cancer Prevention and Research and Vice President-elect of FOXI. Dr. Nirja Bhatla.
Thank you. Other awards, excellence awards will be given later.
Yes. So now we'll have a group photograph with all our editorial members. Let's have a big round of applause for them. Thank you, congratulations, and many, many thanks. Dr. J.B. Sharma personally introduced and thanked everyone. So ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, the IOG Journal has emerged as a trusted and well-researched referral publication for the medical fraternity and is now indexed in EBSCO, Google Scholar, and has also been included in the UGC Care List. In order to maximize its reach across the globe, we are delighted to announce that IOG Journal is available online with all its issues just a click away in a structured and reader-friendly format. I now request Dr. Aziz to release the latest issue of IOG Journal. I would also request, sir, to release the IOG Journal online. So you can, sir, click the mouse and release it online. Thank you, sir. We hope that all of you will log into the website and become a part of the IOG family. While the display screens give you a digitalized view of the journal, the same has been also included in your respective kits and is uploaded on the IOG website. Thank you once again, Dr. Aziz. We shall now proceed to the much-awaited presentation of the IOG Dr. Satyapal Awards 23-24. The awards are being given to the authors of best papers published in the IOG Journal under 3 categories: Best Case Report, Best Review Article, and Best Original Study. The jury, comprising national and international experts, reviewed all submissions to IOG for the year 2022. The names of the eminent authors were kept confidential to maintain complete authenticity. A lot of effort went into reviewing the submissions, and we'd like to thank each of our jury members for the same. Ladies and gentlemen, the award for the Best Case Report goes to Dr. Mala Raj, Managing Director, Firm Hospitals, Chennai. Let's hear it for her. Her report was on laparoscopic management of intravenous leiomyomatosis, and we are afraid that she was not able to join us today for some reason, but she has sent us her recorded presentation, so we now view the same.
Good evening, everybody. At the outset, I would like to thank IOG for giving me this opportunity to present the laparoscopic management of intravenous leiomyomatosis for its rarity. A 47-year-old para-2 live 2 presented with postmenopausal bleeding, and she attained menopause at the age of 40 years with a large uterus of about 16 weeks size, and she had a fibroid of about 5 by 4 centimeters with endometrial hyperplasia and right ovarian cyst of about 11 by 6 centimeters. The tumor markers including the CA-125 were found to be normal, and echocardiogram was also found to be normal, and she was posted for a routine TLH with BSO. So while proceeding with the TLH, after completing on the left side, on the right side, while tackling the uterine arteries, we found that there was a fleshy worm-like tissue which was getting extruded from the uterine pedicles and was stuck to the harmonic scalpel. So on looking at this fleshy tissue, it was suggestive of intravenous leiomyomatosis. So took this fleshy tissue and kept aside and proceeded with the TLH routinely. So you can see that there are few more fleshy brands noticed from the uterine pedicle. So the cauterization of the pedicles were done and the steps of TLH were continued. So decided to remove this fibrous tissue only after completing the procedure, because we'll have sufficient space to tackle the bleeder, and also it will be lot more easier for us as we'll have a better vision. So after removing the uterus, we found that because of the abrasion caused by the uterus, there were quite a lot of bleeding from these vascular pedicles. Now the hemostasis was being secured on these vascular pedicles and also in the vault, and you can see the worm-like structure which is still hanging out from that of the uterine vessels. So once the field of vision is made clear, then we decided to remove this fleshy tissue from the pedicle. So you can also see the ureters running lateral to the uterine pedicles. Now you can see that the uterine, the fleshy tissue is going to be grabbed by the non-tooth grasper, and you can see them bleeding coming from that of the vascular pedicles. So the tissue is now being kept aside in the vagina, and the hemostasis of the uterine arteries are addressed. So using a bipolar, the uterine arteries are now being secure and hemostasis is achieved. So once hemostasis is achieved, you can see that the entire pelvis is clean. The ovarian cyst which was on the right side was put in a bag and removed in a bag after decompressing the cyst by aspirating the fluid. So at the end of the procedure, you can have a clean pelvis. So post-operatively, the report came as intravenous leiomyomatosis. So intravenous leiomyomatosis is characterized by formation of benign leiomyomatous tissue within the vascular wall, and it is a very rare condition, and less than 400 cases have been reported until now. So it is characterized by smooth muscle growth with potential to extend to the inferior vena cava, the right atrium and the pulmonary arteries, where it can lead to embolic phenomenon, heart block or death. The patient may be asymptomatic or present with symptoms like menorrhagia, pelvic mass, as in case of fibroids. The mainstay of treatment is complete surgical resection of the existing tumor with hysterectomy and bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy. It occurs in the 5th decade, and there is pain and bleeding due to leiomyoma, and if it extends into the IVC, it causes hemodynamic compromise, dyspnea, syncope and congestive heart failure. Multiple myometrial masses and worm-like plugs have been noticed within the parametrial vessels, and lung is a common site of spread. The incidence is uncommon with about 0.25 to 0.4%, and the origin has been postulated by two theories. The Noah's theory, where they suggest that they arise from the smooth muscle cell, and the Sitz and Fries theory, where they suggest that it is existing from the pre-existing fibroid which proliferate and invade the venous channel. However, the risk factors for intravenous leiomyomatosis is high estrogen and in the Caucasian group. So it is difficult to diagnose pre-operatively as most of these women are asymptomatic. Rarely, it can intrude into the IVC and cause ascites, limb swelling and liver enlargement. It can also extend into the heart, pulmonary arteries and cause congestive heart failure, syncope and sudden death. So the 4 stages of intravenous leiomyomatosis have been described. Stage 1 is the tumor growing towards the uterine venous wall but confined to the pelvic cavity. 2 is when the tumor extends into the abdominal cavity but without reaching the renal vein. 3 when the tumor reaches the renal vein and IVC or the right atrium but without reaching the pulmonary arteries. Stage 4 is when there is a metastasis or invasion of the pulmonary arteries. So the mainstay of treatment is surgical excision with TLH and BSO. And advanced stage, depending on the extension of the vessel, early treatment is recommended with single or double procedure by the multidisciplinary team. GnRH agonists, selective estrogen receptor modulators, aromatase inhibitors to reduce the size of the tumor or prevent recurrence should be given. So this is a histopathological examination which demonstrates smooth muscle cells surrounding a vessel wall and similar to that of the fibroid. So the recurrence rate for intravenous leiomyomatosis is about 16.6 to 30%, and few studies reported that the initial large myoma or a broad ligament myoma or incomplete surgical resection are associated with recurrence. So long-term imaging and follow-up is recommended in these patients. Thank you so much for your patient listening.
So Dr. Malaraj, actually her mother got unwell, so suddenly she had to cancel, but she sent her video and we present. But you can see, I mean, how this was a rare case report. Of course, it was up to the jury how it was decided. So aim is to stimulate our young researchers to present their paper, which paper are like get award. So unusual manifestations of a rare disease like, leiomyoma going into, my fibroid is so common, but it was going into the veins and it can even go into the chambers of the heart and pulmonary vessels. So that was probably what won the award to this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Her award will be sent to her later. We would also like to mention her co-authors' names, Dr. Harleen and Dr. Padala Sri Tejaswini, both from Firm Hospitals, Chennai. Their certificates will also be sent to them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the presentation of the IOG Awards for the Best Review Article. The award for the Best Review Article goes to Dr. Swati Rai, Assistant Professor, Sharda Medical College, Greater Noida. I now invite Dr. Swati to please come on stage and make brief presentation. She has reviewed novel therapeutic approaches to PCOS in an excellent manner. Dr. Swati Rai.
Good morning, everybody. So I want to thank all the esteemed doctors here and Dr. Ricardo Aziz, Dr. J.B. Sharma, Dr. Sushma ma'am, and for giving me the honor. So the review article that I have written, the topic was Novel Therapeutic Approaches to PCOS. PCOS is a very common disorder that is having a rising, it's like a rising epidemic. So it's a metabolic endocrine syndrome that's characterized by menstrual irregularities, hirsutism, hyperandrogenism, insulin resistance, obesity, and infertility. Effective treatment is need of the hour because of the complex pathophysiology of this disorder, be it genetic, environment, endocrine, so many factors associated. It's a modern epidemic of a society with upsurge of incidence as high as 5 to 10%. Some of the studies even are saying that the incidence is more. So the clinical features are defined by the Rotterdam consensus criteria, either 2 of the 3, hyperandrogenism, anovulation, and polycystic ovary on the ultrasound. Metabolic and cardiovascular disease risk is also associated with this particular syndrome. Approximately 40 to 85% of women are overweight or obese. Insulin resistance is seen in 30% of lean and 70% of obese women. There is high risk of NASH, non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, and obstructed sleep apnea. So it's a complex multifactorial trait that is similar to type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome. Management, primarily we involve treating the individual component of the syndrome. Like if the patient is coming with menstrual irregularity, dysfunction, anovulation, hirsutism, we are treating them. but there is something more to it, secondarily controlling the reproductive hormone and insulin level. So the first line management comprises of lifestyle modification, diet, exercise, combined oral contraceptive pills as per the symptoms of the patient, and the second line management is metformin. So basically, I want to lay a foundation that there are more therapies that can be started in PCOS patients, and there are many studies with these therapies. They are novel, complementary and alternative remedies. Nutraceuticals, plant products showing promising efficacy in PCOS management like spearmint, flax, fennel. They have phytoestrogens, they have anti-androgenic action, and they even improve insulin resistance. There is a concept of seed cycling by the consumption of certain seeds in synchrony with the menstrual cycle. It can help relieve hormone-related symptoms of PCOS. So the protocol is 2 phases needs to be followed for 2 weeks each. In the first 2 weeks, flax and pumpkin seeds, and in the other 2 weeks, sunflower and sesame seeds. Some of the studies have shown that this does have benefit. Traditional Chinese medicines. Shen Nong was the medical scientist who started this. There are 2 divisions to it, TCM monomer and TCM compound. Berberine is in markets. It's actually a traditional Chinese medicine. It's a quaternary ammonium salt and alkaloid extracted Chinese medicinal Coptis chinensis. Research has shown its significant action on decreasing the blood glucose, improving insulin resistance, decreasing androgen, and improving lipid metabolism. It upregulates GLUT4 and MAPK pathway. Cryptoshanninon, Chinese monomer, it's an herb extracted or derived from damson roots. It improves lipid glucose metabolism and hyperandrogenemia. Conclusion is it has beneficial effect on HPO axis action as well as lipid metabolism. Acupuncture, it's a part of TCM. It was first started in China 3,500 years ago, and for PCOS also it's been practiced for very long. It actually regulates the function of HPO axis, promotes ovulation, improves insulin resistance and endometrial receptivity, modulates leptin and ghrelin, and even sympathetic action, thereby increasing the ovarian blood flow. Now it's evolved into various other forms like electroacupuncture, warm acupuncture, acupoint embedding, and auricular points. It refers to the needles are inserted into the patient's specific body areas at certain angle to cure the disease through manipulations such as twisting, lifting, and thirsting. It reduces BMI, HOMA-IR, and improves ovulation and pregnancy rate. Approaches in the management of hyperglycemia, that is a common finding in PCOS patients. Resveratrol, it's a natural polyphenol, has favorable metabolic effects, balances lipid profile and improves insulin resistance. Physical activity, when it is combined with this, we get better results. Insulin sensitizers like metformin, GLP receptor agonist, thiazolidinediones. Rutins, they are flavonoids, phytochemicals, have anti-androgenic, hyperlipidemic and oxidative stress consequence of PCOS. So they are the drug of choice when these factors are associated. Vitamin supplements, many people are already using. So these are the benefits of vitamins that can be contributed to PCOS treatment. Vitamin A, it has antioxidant activity, steroid metabolism, inhibit apoptosis and promote the nuclear maturation of oocytes. Vitamin B, B6, B12 and folic acid. Vitamin B8, inositol, naturally occurs in 5 stereoisomers. The most important one are D-chiroinositol that controls glycogen synthesis, insulin-induced androgen synthesis, and myoinositol modulates glucose uptake and FSH signaling. Vitamin D has potential role in glucose homeostasis, influence on insulin secretion by the pancreas, improve folliculogenesis by reducing the serum AMH level, reducing excess androgen synthesis. Vitamin E can reduce the triglyceride and serum total cholesterol, improve insulin resistance in PCOS patients. So the conclusion is that by implementation of complementary and alternative medicine, immunotherapy, vitamin supplementation, diet therapy, oxygen therapy, and traditional Chinese medicine as a primary mode of management in PCOS, we can start with these things. Medicinal treatment have not seen any breakthrough in recent years. PCOS is still an enigmatic disease. We are trying to search for more. Hence, there is a need to conduct further research to find new drugs and natural products that could improve PCOS patients' well-being and quality of life. Nutritional supplementation, dietary modulation, as well as healthcare practices provide beneficial outcome not only in the cases of PCOS, but also multiple aspects of their health. There is no harm as they are natural. They pose low risk adjunct to the conventional PCOS treatment that's usually been performed. Thank you.
So you can see this is a very good review article, I mean how the jury decided. So for the new postgraduates, I mean you can write a good review article covering all aspects including like natural method they have covered. So probably that may be the reason of them winning. It's a good article and say a topic of choice because Professor Ricardo Aziz has done so much work on PCOS and metabolic syndrome. So I think that must have, influenced the best paper award. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You want to comment?
No, I'm just going to comment that I'm going to have to read the article because a lot of very important points there. We don't pay enough attention to complementary medicine. I think it's important to do that. So thank you for that.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Swati, and many congratulations. I now request Dr. Aziz and President Madam to present the award to Dr. Swati.
Dr. Neerja Goel is not there?
Dr. Neerja Goel.
Dr. Neerja Goel, please you also come.
Co-author is
and
also
that
requested.
also shows the importance of mentoring. Dr. Neerja Goel has been professor head of UCMS and brilliant teacher. So I think her mentoring has, played a role in getting this award. Dr. Neerja, please. Yes, thank you.
So she is the co-author and she is joining us on stage to collect her certificate. We would also like to mention the other co-author, Dr. Mohit Gupta, who has not been able to join us today, but his certificate will be sent to him.
She has been very brilliant AP with me at Sharda Hospital. I am proud of her.
The co-author, Dr. Neerja Goel. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And now we come to the presentation of the IOG Awards for the Best Original Study. The award for the Best Original Study goes to Dr. Shovik Das, Assistant Professor, Department of Obs and Gynae, IQ City Medical College Hospital, Durgapur, Kolkata. A big round of applause for Dr. Das. We would like to invite Dr. Shovik Das to come on stage and make a brief presentation on the original study, intravenous labetalol versus intravenous hydralazine in the management of severe preeclampsia, a clinical trial. Dr. Shovik Das.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank Indian Obstetrics and Gynaecology for providing me this opportunity to present my paper in front of this august gathering. So, our paper was on intravenous labetalol versus intravenous hydralazine in the management of severe preeclampsia, a randomized recipient-blinded clinical trial. So, as we all know, preeclampsia affects approximately 2 to 8% of all the pregnancies worldwide, and it is still a major cause of feto-maternal morbidity and mortality. The first-line antihypertensive recommended for control of acute rise in blood pressure in severe preeclampsia includes intravenous hydralazine, oral and intravenous labetalol, and oral lymphodepine. And Among them, hydralazine and labetalol are commonly used antihypertensive agents used during pregnancy. So recently, a Cochrane systematic review concluded that there is no evidence that one antihypertensive agent is preferable to the others for improving the outcome in women with very high blood pressure during pregnancy. So, labetalol, as we all know, is a non-selective beta blocker and a postsynaptic alpha blocker, and it causes little tachycardia and a degraded decrease in the blood pressure. And hydralazine, it acts as a directly acting peripheral smooth muscle relaxant. However, sometimes it may cause the unpredictable decrease in the blood pressure and reflex tachycardia. And some of the symptoms of the hydralazine, like nausea, vomiting and headache, may mimic any worsening conditions in severe preeclampsia. So the objectives of our study, the primary objective was to find out the safety and efficacy profile for hydralazine and labetalol for acutely lowering blood pressure in severe preeclampsia, and secondary objective was to see the effect of these drugs on maternal and perinatal outcome. So this was a prospective single-center recipient-blinded randomized trial. So the inclusion criteria included pregnant women more than 20 weeks with singleton pregnancy and defined severe hypertension, with, that is, systolic blood pressure more than or equal to 160 millimeter mercury and or diastolic blood pressure more than 110 millimeter mercury and proteinuria of at least 1+ on urine dipstick. And the exclusion criteria included the risk factors for inducing pregnancy with hypertension, like multifetal gestation, any known allergy to hydralazine or labetalol, maternal tachycardia or bradycardia, and women with history of medical disorders like renal disorders, cardiac disease, bronchial asthma, severe anemia and diabetes mellitus. So the study was conducted on 130 pregnant women with severe preeclampsia. The duration of study was from March 2017 to 2018 and was conducted at Medical College, Calcutta in the Department of Obstetrics and Gynaecology. So the study population was randomly assigned into two groups with 65 each, and each receiving intravenous labetalol and intravenous hydralazine for control of blood pressure. And the study subjects were not informed about the kind of drug they were receiving. So the desired end systolic blood pressure was systolic is 130 to 140 millimeter of mercury, and diastolic blood pressure was 80 to 100 millimeter of mercury. So hydralazine was given as 5 milligram IV slow bolus at a 10-minute interval for a maximum dose of 4 doses, and labetalol was given by 20 milligram intravenous bolus followed by 40 milligram, and then if not controlled with 80 milligram and another 80 milligram at an interval of 10 minutes, and for a maximum dose of 220 milligram in So the baseline characteristics, majority of the mothers in the both arms of the study were nulliparous and supported that preeclampsia is more common among primigravida. So in our study, the average time to achieve desired blood pressure control and the number of doses required for similar for both the drugs, and none of the drugs caused an intense or a rapid fall in blood pressure. So with labetalol, around 22 minutes was required for control of blood pressure, and with hydralazine, it was around 24 minutes with a p-value of 0.05, which showed that this is not statistically significant. And generally in 46, that is 70% of labetalol patients required 1 to 2 doses, and 78.46 patients in the hydralazine group required 1 to 2 doses for control of blood pressure. And 3 or more doses were required in a minimum number of patients, and this was also not statistically significant. And regarding blood pressure and hemodynamic outcomes, systolic and blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure decrease has no significant differences. However, there was a difference in the heart rate before and administering the hydralazine, as we can see. So the mean heart rate before the drug was 84 in the labetalol group and 86 beats per minute in the hydralazine group without any statistical significance. However, after the heart rate After the drug was introduced, heart rate was significantly increased in the hydrolysine, showing its effect as reflex tachycardia. And this was supported as previous studies by other authors. Regarding maternal outcome, there was no significant difference between the two groups with respect to mean maternal gestational age, birth weight, and the mode of delivery. And there was no difference demonstrated in the maternal outcome between two groups, as all the women had an uncomplicated delivery at or near term. However, headache and palpitations were the notable side effects and were significantly more frequent in women receiving hydrolysine compared to labetalol. So, 16 patients in the hydrolysine group reported headache and 10 patients in the hydrolysine group reported palpitation, as against 2 patients in the labetalol group respectively. Fetal outcome and fetal bradycardia was observed only in 2 patients in the hydrolysine group and 6 patients in the labetalol group. However, this was not statistically significant, and thus the fetal outcome parameters in both the groups were comparable, further corroborating the non-superiority of these drugs over one another. The fetal outcome regarding Apgar score, admission to NICU, and birth weight were comparable in the 2 groups. So, the results of our study were comparable to studies conducted by Mabey et al. And Ash. Other studies have also indicated that labetalol has little or no effect on the heart rate, and this was supported by our result. In our study, a significant statistical difference in the heart rate between the 2 study groups were found after the drug administration, illustrating the fact that reflex tachycardia is one of the troublesome side effects of hydrolysine, limiting its use as antihypertensive agents in preeclampsia. So, Vigil de Gracia also reported a rather higher frequency of maternal tachycardia and palpitations in his study with the use of hydrolysine compared to the use of labetalol. And in a study by Nambur et al. Conducted at Kenya, headache was significantly more frequent in patients given with hydrolysine than labetalol. So, and other researchers in various parts of the world had reported similar studies and similar adverse maternal side effects with either hydrolysine and labetalol. So, to conclude, we concluded that severe preeclampsia leads to life-threatening complications like cardiovascular accidents and acute kidney injury. Hence, it is of utmost importance to rapidly control the blood pressure. Our randomized clinical trial has shown equally effective control of blood pressure with both labetalol and hydrolysine, and almost similar maternal and perinatal outcomes, and its almost similar side effect profile. Therefore, until conclusive results are obtained regarding superiority of hydrolysine or labetalol, choice of drug should depend on clinician's experience and discretion. Thus, the fetal outcome parameters in both the groups are also comparable, further corroborating the finding of non-superiority of one drug over the another. Thank you.
So thank you, Dr. Das. That was excellent study. And for the post-graduation and others, so you can see how meticulously they did the study. They randomized the patients into 2 groups, and preeclampsia, severe preeclampsia is a very common condition. And they beautifully highlighted it, and they have proven that, IV labetalol is as good as hydrolysine or rather superior. It is much economical also. So that's why this study has given significant results to us, and has a direct public health significance, because preeclampsia is so common and day-to-day practice. So I think that might have influenced the decision of jury member in favor of this original study. And you can see one case report has one from North India, original study from East India, and case report from South India. So North, East, South, all 3 parts of the country have been demonstrated in our awards. So thank you. That shows that everyone can get award. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shovik Das, and I request Dr. Aziz and President Madam to present the award to Dr. Das.
Are your co-authors there? There, okay.
We'll just mention the names of the co-authors who are not here: Dr. Isha Sudrania and Dr. Pallab Kumar Mistry and Dr. Nidhi Somani, all from West Bengal. A big round of applause for Dr. Das. We'll be sending these certificates to his co-authors later. Many congratulations once again, and thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are also delighted to have with us Dr. Neha Barlia, granddaughter of Dr. Satyapal and daughter of Mrs. Sushma Paul Barlia and Mr. Vijay Barlia. She is the co-promoter and member of the Senior Management Board of APJ Satya and Swaran Group, an international conglomerate of businesses with major interests in education, pharmaceuticals, and life sciences and real estate. She is a graduate in economics from Stanford University, USA, and holds a PhD in finance and a master's degree in management and banking from the University of St. Gallen in Switzerland. She also has studied business at Harvard Business School as part of the Owner-President Management Program. Dr. Barlia has held several leadership roles in industry bodies, including as co-chair of Education Committee of the PhD Chamber of Commerce and as the co-chair of ASSOCHAM, National Council on Real Estate and Urban Development. Dr. Barlia is a well-known educational leader and serves as the Joint Secretary of APJ Education, which is responsible for overseeing 26 educational institutions, including the APJ Satya University, collectively comprising over 5,000 educators and staff members and over 40,000 students. Dr. Barlia also serves as the Pro-Chancellor of APJ Satya University. Dr. Barlia has been bestowed with numerous awards and accolades. Recently, she was bestowed with the Educationist for the year 2023 by the Center for Education Growth and Research during the 21st Rashtriya Shiksha Gaurav Puraskar ceremony held in New Delhi. She was also conferred with the Edu Visionary Leader of the Year 2022 award and the prestigious 21 Innovative Leader Award at the 2022 The Education Summit Mumbai and at the 4th edition of the Business Leader of the Year 2021 conference respectively. Additionally, Dr. Barlia is an Indian national medalist athlete and an award-winning Indian classical musician as well as passionate philanthropist. I now request Dr. Neha Barlia to say a few words about Dr. Ricardo Aziz, our esteemed guest of the day.
Good morning, respected dignitaries, esteemed doctors, ladies and gentlemen. Today's oration lecture is meant to enrich us on metabolic syndrome in women. As you are aware, metabolic syndrome significantly impacts women's health. It poses risks during pregnancy, affecting both mother and baby. Moreover, it is linked to an increased likelihood of chronic conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, stroke, and liver disease, and many more. Managing metabolic syndrome is vital for women's well-being, preventing associated conditions and supporting reproductive health and promoting overall health. To shed more light, we are delighted to have Dr. Ricardo Aziz. Dr. Aziz is an internationally recognized physician, scientist, and executive. His biomedical research focuses on the study of androgen excess disorders in women, having published 11 books and over 500 original peer-reviewed articles, book chapters, and reviews. He is the founder and former senior executive director of the Androgen Excess and PCOS Society. He is also the founder and current executive director of Foundation of Research and Education Excellence, the Free Foundation. Among other executive positions, Dr. Aziz has served as Deputy Director of the Clinical and Translational Sciences Institute and Assistant Dean for Clinical and Translational Sciences, as well as Vice Chair of Obstetrics and Gynaecology at UCLA, also as Chair of Obstetrics and Gynaecology and Director of the Center of Androgen-Related Disorders and at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center, Los Angeles, and as CEO of the American Society of Reproductive Medicine, managing the largest international nonprofit dedicated to advancing the care and science of reproductive medicine, as well as a Chief Science and Strategy Officer and EVP Operational Strategy and Scientific Affairs for the Lundquist Institute for Biomedical Innovation at Harbor UCLA Medical Center. He also served president of the Georgia Health Sciences University, the GHSU, and was tasked with creating the state's only public academic health center, serving as founder CEO of the Georgia Region's Health System, GRHS, now Augusta University Health System. He was then tapped to lead the successful consolidation of GHSU and Augusta State University to create Georgia Regents University, now Augusta University, where he went on to serve as its founder president. Dr. Aziz also served as Chief Officer of Academic Health and Hospital Affairs for the State University of New York System Administration, the largest comprehensive university system in the nation. He is a long-term champion of faculty and leadership development and has enhanced diversity and inclusion in academics, higher education, and academic administration, having served as a founding director of the State University of New York Hispanic Leadership Institute, appointed by Governor Andrew Cuomo, and as long-term senior mentor in the Network of Minority Health Research Investigators, NMRI, of the NIDDK, National Institutes of Health. Dr. Aziz has received, among other recognitions, the 2000 President's Achievement Award of the Society for Gynaecological Investigation, elected a member of the Association of American Physicians, and he's also the recipient of the 2014 Alumni Fellow Award of the Pennsylvania State University Alumni Association, and the recipient as well of the 2022 PCOS Challenge International Researcher Influencer Award. Dr. Aziz serves on the faculties of the University at Albany at University of New York and the University of Alabama at Birmingham as fellow of the Rockefeller Institute for Government and as member of the editorial board of the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism. Dr. Aziz is also an accomplished visual artist. May I now request Dr. Ricardo Aziz to come to the podium to deliver his oration lecture on the much-awaited topic, Metabolic Syndrome in Women, Unraveling the Complexities and Implementing Effective Strategies. Welcome.
Good morning. Neha, thank you very much. That was very generous. Slide, move forward. Great. I'm deeply honored to be here. This is a very special occasion, and I truly am humbled by being here. We are here, obviously, to recognize a man who was extraordinary. Dr. Satya Paul was somebody that I'm sorry I did not get to meet, because I would have liked to meet him in person. This gathering is about him, but more importantly, it is about his legacy. And his legacy really is the family that he created. And I will have to congratulate all of you, because as somebody who's a father of a family, I will tell you that it is extraordinary, the legacy that he created. Sushma, by you and your children, have been extraordinary. Because it is not every day that we have great industrialists, great entrepreneurs, great economists, great business people who also recognize that wealth, assets, growth is much more than about themselves. It is about making the world a better place, because that's truly our legacy. And so for that, we thank you and we congratulate you. Let me start out
about in my lecture. My lecture is entitled Metabolic Syndrome in Women, Unraveling the Complexities and Implementing Effective Strategies, and I will only be able to touch on this because there is no way that I can unravel the complexities of what I'm going to talk about. As we said, this is in recognition of Dr. Satya Paul, which obviously I don't need to mention any further other than, again, to say I wish I had actually met him. I have a few conflicts of interest. I can guarantee you that none of those pay me enough for me to say something different, so what I say is my own opinion. I do wish somebody would pay me enough for me to change my mind, but apparently that's not enough. So, what we'll do today is we'll cover in the next 45 minutes or so some general concepts about metabolic syndrome and metabolic dysfunction, as well as PCOS. Some mechanisms of, we'll talk a little bit about the mechanisms of metabolic dysfunction and PCOS. We'll talk about the treatment of metabolic syndrome and metabolic dysfunction, and then have some concluding remarks. Now, metabolic dysfunction affects a broad swath of the population of most countries. Metabolic dysfunction leads to certain disorders, right? It leads to cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction-associated stereotactic liver disease, or what now is called MASLD as opposed to NAFLD. Sleep apnea, cholelithiasis, a large number of problems. So metabolic dysfunction is something that we obviously understand. And clinically, it presents differently. It presents as diabetes, as metabolic syndrome, as polycystic ovary syndrome, as lipodystrophy, and a large number of other disorders. So there are a number of definitions of metabolic syndrome, and I'm not going to bore you with this, except to say simply that they all are somewhat different. Some of them require you to have insulin resistance first, and then other features. Others require you to not have anything at all and simply have a few of the features. We generally, tend to use the NA-NCAP ATP diagnosis. That's the one we tend to use most, at least in the United States. Now, in most countries, about 20 to 30% of adult women have metabolic syndrome. 10 to 15% of reproductive women have polycystic ovary syndrome, and about 7% of the population has diabetes. And the prevalence of metabolic dysfunction is on the rise, driven in part by changes in nutrition, exercise, and the global obesity pandemic. Now, in India, and this is a meta-analysis that was recently published, you can see that the prevalence of metabolic syndrome is also very high in this study. It rises from about 13% of the population among women who are, among individuals who are 18 to 29, to as far high as 41% of the population for individuals over the age of 60. That means that truly more than half of the population of India will eventually be affected by metabolic syndrome as they age, which is dramatic. The proportion of metabolic syndrome is higher in women. And this is something that we often underestimate. About a third of all women will have metabolic syndrome. About a fifth of all men will also have metabolic syndrome. And finally, there are differences in region, right? It is about a third of individuals in urban areas and tribal areas will be affected, but it is less, significantly less, in rural areas of India, which tells us that actually some of the environmental factors, our nutritional factors, our behaviors will actually impact that prevalence. So India is not immune to the epidemic of metabolic syndrome that we have in the world. Now, how does metabolic dysfunction occur? Well, the principal really mechanism, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we talk about some of our research, but the principal really is an impairment in insulin-mediated glucose uptake. In other words, in the action of insulin on glucose, That is the principal mechanism by which you have metabolic dysfunction, along with a dysfunction in lipolysis inhibition. You may all remember that insulin has three principal effects. It actually helps move glucose into the cells, right? Insulin-mediated glucose uptake. It inhibits lipolysis, right? And it has anabolic effects. It stimulates certain tissues to grow. But in general, insulin resistance does not actually impact the anabolic activities of insulin, which are actually managed by MAP kinase. It's a pathway we'll talk about. It primarily impacts the insulin and the lipid section of insulin. And this is why insulin resistance tends to be dangerous, because it doesn't affect tissues and it doesn't affect mechanisms equally. Now, it is important to understand that there are a lot of other factors that modulate this. It isn't just these two things. Genetics will do this. There's a large number of differences and a large number of environmental factors that impact on how metabolic dysfunction is presented. So some of the metabolic disorders, like polycystic ovary syndrome, are also involved hyperinsulinemia. So it isn't enough to have insulin resistance, but if you have excess insulin, you then have the effects of excess insulin, which we're going to talk about in a second. So let's take a pause now for a minute. We've talked very rapidly about what metabolic dysfunction is. And we know that the principle, that one of the most common clinical disorders associated with metabolic dysfunction in women is polycystic ovary syndrome. Now, polycystic ovary syndrome can be confusing to people who don't actually know it. But to be fair, I will say it is very simple. Now, there are three different criteria that have been used: NIH 1990, Rotterdam 2003, and APCOS 2006. And I've been very fortunate to be involved in all three of these. But I will simply say that that's not what we care about today. What we care about today, and you as practicing clinicians should know, we tend to divide PCOS into phenotypes. And so there are generally three principal types of PCOS that we talk about. We talk about classic PCOS, the A and B phenotype, right? These are women who have excess male hormones, hirsutism, hyperandrogenism, polycystic ovaries, perhaps, and ovulatory dysfunction. This is what we call classic PCOS. Then there is phenotype C, which is what we call ovulatory PCOS. This is PCOS that actually really has excess male hormones, polycystic ovaries, but actually normal ovulation. And finally, phenotype D, which is the most complicated of the phenotypes. It's the most controversial, I should say, not complicated. And that is individuals who have non-hyperandrogenic PCOS. They have polycystic ovaries, ovulatory dysfunction, but again, don't have androgen excess. And again, if you look at this chart, you will see that today we should be speaking about the different types, phenotypes of PCOS, not just which criteria you use. It makes absolutely no difference which criteria you use. It makes a difference, as I'll show you, why the phenotypes matter. Now, PCOS is a diagnosis of exclusion. It is a diagnosis that only remains after you have excluded things like thyroid disorders, Cushing disorders, tumors, and everything else, mostly by history. So it's important to remember that every patient with PCOS should be screened for similar disorders, and that is TSH, prolactin, and 17-hydroxyprogesterone. If you don't do that, you actually don't have PCOS. So I think it's important to remember. All right. Now, the pathophysiology of PCOS is, sometimes complicated, but the truth is, it's not very complicated at all. You have insulin resistance stemming mostly from adipose tissue dysfunction. I'll show you some data on that. There is gonadotropic abnormalities with excess LH, if you would, an insensitivity to progesterone. And then that impacts on the ovary. The ovary produces too much male hormones. The excess male hormones then impact ovulation and impact other features like the liver. So it is not a complicated disorder. What is complicated is, why does it start in the first place? And that we don't yet know. Now, the prevalence of PCOS is actually high. I will tell you that my team did the first study of the PCOS prevalence. In 1998, we published a study which was actually the first prevalence study in the world. Until then, we actually thought that PCOS was relatively rare. We thought that maybe we see PCOS because we're specialists or something like that. But in 1998, we did a study that we surveyed and we studied women who were coming in for a pre-employment physical and found that, in fact, 5 to 6 to 7% of those women were actually affected with PCOS, which was shocking to us, and it was shocking to the world at that moment in time. And since then, many other studies have replicated that finding, and so today we know that PCOS is the single most common endocrine disorder of women worldwide. We ourselves have done a large number of these studies. We have studies in Nigeria, Ghana, Colombia, Siberia, Trinidad and Tobago. We've done studies all over the United States and in Europe and the Middle East, trying to prove that perhaps PCOS is not as common in other countries, and what we find is that, in fact, it is as common in all countries as possible. This is a meta-analysis of that showing that it, in fact, affects a large number of individuals. Now, metabolic syndrome is also very common in PCOS. In most studies, and this is another meta-analysis, and I will tell you that while my students love to do meta-analyses, I don't like meta-analyses very much. And the reason is, meta-analyses often simply magnify the same errors all the time, right? So if all the studies have a single error, they just magnify them. But they are good to illustrate. They have nice graphs, so we can use them. But the reality is that metabolic syndrome is very frequent in PCOS, and it's most frequent, of course, in PCOS of women who are obese. Now, all of this leads to an increase in various complications. It increases the risk of endometrial cancer, it increases the risk of impaired glucose tolerance, diabetes, gestational diabetes, it increases the risk of metabolic syndrome, dyslipidemia, strokes particularly, and possibly cardiovascular deaths. We don't really know much about cardiovascular deaths because it's actually difficult to test that in younger women. But the risk of stroke is much higher in women who have PCOS than otherwise. And all of this really translates into a very heavy economic burden. This is a study we published this year or a few months ago in which we calculated the healthcare-related economic burden of PCOS in the United States. And this is just the United States. And the cost of healthcare-related economic burden of PCOS was about $15 billion yearly. Now, this is in the United States alone, and this is not in considering things like indirect costs related to work productivity, not related to, intangible costs which are related to quality of life. So the economic impact of PCOS is enormous in a society, and I think all of us who treat it understand that. Now, sometimes we tend to forget who actually did these things for the first time. So this is a study by Bergen, Gibbons, and Katabchi, and they were at the University of Tennessee. And this is a story that will tell you how sometimes mistakes can lead to actual good findings. Because Bergen was a young pediatric endocrinology fellow who needed a research study. So Gibbons was OBGYN chairman, and Katabchi, who was actually heading the fellowship program, said to Bergen, why don't we study the impact of male hormones, right, androgens, on insulin resistance? We can't actually give women androgens, although I don't know why they didn't want to do that. But let's go to the OBGYN chairman who studies these things called polycystic ovarian disease, and all these women have high male hormones, and so hence we'll test what happens with high male hormones in women. And so they did a very simple study. They just got a few women with back then, polycystic ovarian disease, PCOD, and a few women that were normal, and they did oral glucose tolerance tests, and lo and behold, they found that the women with PCOD were very high, had very high insulin levels in response to the glucose tolerance test. And so the first postulate was, okay, androgens do this. Except that actually they realized shortly thereafter that it had nothing to do with androgens, that these women were affected with insulin resistance independent of their androgens. Because even when they were treated with birth control pills, they still were insulin resistant. So this is how we got to know that patients with PCOS actually were insulin resistant. The study was published in 1980. And again, it was a mistaken study. It was a study based on a mistaken profile, but the authors understood that. This has been confirmed by many other authors. This is data from Andrea Duneif, who again collected insulin-mediated glucose disposal using a clamp. So we know that PCOS women do have insulin resistance. It's clear. And the prevalence of that is somewhere between 75 and 85% of all women with PCOS. So what does that matter? Why does that matter? Well, it matters because of this. This is a data from John Nestler, a good friend of ours. And John studied the effect of insulin on the ovary. And so what he found is the following. When he put insulin in with cells from patients with PCOS, with ovarian theca cells from patients with PCOS, that insulin stimulated a massive discharge of androgens. When he did the same thing with normal cells, with cells from normal in women, the response for androgens was very small. So what we know is that PCOS women tend to have a hyper response to androgens. And he went on to test that even further. What he did is he gave women diazoxide, which suppresses your insulin. You can't do it for too long because people die. But he did it for about 10 days, and he found that as he suppressed insulin, the androgen levels dropped as well. So what we know is that PCOD, or PCOS as we call it today, isn't just related to insulin resistance, isn't just related to hyperinsulinemia. It is related also to hyperresponsiveness of the ovary to that insulin. So this is a cartoon of what we know today about PCOS. So we have a number of factors. Insulin receptor abnormalities, adipose tissue dysfunction, I'll show you a little bit of that. And that all leads to insulin resistance, to difficulty in insulin managing glucose and lipid levels. What happens in women with PCOS is that they have pretty good pancreatic function and they have a lot of insulin. Hyperinsulinemia is produced, very high levels of insulin. And that high level of insulin then stimulates the ovarian theca together with LH to produce then hyperandrogenism. And that hyperinsulinemia also suppresses the liver to then again suppress SHBG and help hyperandrogenemia. So in general, it isn't so much the insulin resistance in PCOS, it is the hyperinsulinemia that actually matters. And that's the one that we need to be paying attention to. So my group has studied primarily adipose tissue dysfunction to understand the cause of insulin resistance, and I'll show you a little bit of this data. So this is studies that we've done over the years. You can see here that if we look at insulin resistance in adipose tissue cells, fat cells, you can see that PCOS patients have significantly lower levels of glucose uptake for insulin compared to controls in the red. And if you look here at GLUT4 being the principal action item, the principal actor to create glucose transport, you will see that PCOS women have much lower levels of GLUT4 in adipose tissue than normal. We looked at a number of things, a number of pathways. I'm not going to go through these pathways, but just to show you that we did a large number of studies in adipose tissue cells trying to figure out if there was an abnormality in the cell signaling pathway. And we found some, but not a lot. And in the end, what you need to know is that cell signaling appears to be relatively normal, at least initially, in these patients. Secondly, what we found is that there are epigenetic changes in PCOS, so that epigenetics plays a huge role in why PCOS occurs. This is a study that we did. We've done a number of studies looking at microRNA 93. It's an epigenetic factor. And what we find is that microRNA 93 is overexpressed in PCOS, and it's related to both a decrease in glucose transport and an increase in HOMA in patients with PCOS. So again, this is evidence of epigenetic control of insulin resistance. Again, epigenetics that can be managed therapeutically if we had an interest in doing so. We also studied adipose cytokines. As you know, adipose tissue produces a number of hormones that control itself. And macrophages that are also in adipose tissue produce these products that control the adipose tissue. So it's this system in fat that controls itself. But what we found is that, in fact, when you actually try to determine how fat function in PCOS versus controls, in PCOS it was very different. In fact, IL-6, MCP1, and TNF-alpha, these are adipocytokines, had very different effects on adiponectin, which is a good, if you would, product in fat. In PCOS, those products suppress adiponectin, made inflammation worse. In controls, it didn't have much of an effect. So again, there's a large number of abnormalities in adipose tissue to do that. And what we know is that that insulin resistance actually can be predicted clinically. So you don't need to do a lot of tests to actually predict that your patients have insulin resistance. Certainly if they're obese, that helps. But also the severity of menstrual dysfunction. This is a study that we did a few years ago looking at how severe menstrual dysfunction was. And the more severe menstrual dysfunction, the more likely the patient was to be insulin resistant. So again, patients who have amenorrhea will be more likely to be insulin resistant and hyperinsulinemic than patients who have relatively regular frequent cycles. There's a significant relationship between male hormones, androgens, and the degree of insulin resistance. This is a study, again, by Govinder, looking at this, and you can see that free androgen index was a very strong predictor of metabolic syndrome and insulin resistance. In a very recent study published last month in Cardia, Cardia is a large prospective study of the population. We've been involved with Cardia. What we find in Cardia is that androgens, male hormones, androgen levels, are predictive of the risk of women developing metabolic syndrome in the future. So in this particular result, 30% of women developed metabolic syndrome when they did not have metabolic syndrome to begin with. And what we found is, after adjusting for a number of things, the excess male hormones in these women was related to their metabolic syndrome. In other words, higher androgen levels were predictive of your risk of metabolic syndrome 23 years later. So again, androgens matter. And for example, hair growth. A lot of patients have hirsutism, and we tend to think that hirsutism is related to male hormones, but the reality is the strongest predictor of excess hair growth, of too much hair growth, is actually insulin and insulin resistance, HOMA-IR. So in fact, excess hair growth on the face is related to androgens, but the degree, the severity of that hirsutism is related to insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia, which means the more severely hirsute the patient is, the more likely she is to have insulin resistance. And again, the phenotype. Remember, we started a lecture today by talking about the phenotype, A, B, C, and D. The phenotype plays a significant role. Phenotype A and B and perhaps C are highly related to the development of metabolic syndrome. Phenotype D, which is a non-hyperandrogenic PCOS, is not. Which is why it's so critical that when you diagnose your patients with PCOS, you actually define them as phenotype A, B, C, or D. Now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about the metabolic evaluation of patients with PCOS. You can obtain a fasting glucose, you can obtain a fasting insulin, you can even do a hemoglobin A1C, but these are not very good predictors. What you need to do, and all societies have already recommended this, is that all patients with PCOS must undergo a 2-hour glucose tolerance test. And the reason is that you cannot predict glucose intolerance if you don't actually do a glucose tolerance test. So the data is here. This is very simple data. This is a study from Rick Legro, again, a good friend of ours. And what he did is he studied about 254 women by oral glucose tolerance test. These are women with PCOS. And what we find is the following. The baseline level here, okay, down here, cannot predict the 2-hour. Because in fact, if you use a cutoff of say 126 to predict diabetes, you're going to miss half your patients with diabetes. Because PCOS women are different than your standard diabetics. They have very good pancreatic function, they have hyperinsulinemia, and only when you stress them with a glucose tolerance test will you actually then find out that they have insulin resistance and hyperinsulinemia. So again, it's very important to do a glucose tolerance test to determine whether these women have impaired glucose tolerance or diabetes. And we also measure insulin during the glucose tolerance test. And the reason we measure insulin is that, in fact, we want to know if they have hyperinsulinemia. Remember what I said. PCOS is related to insulin resistance, but the reason women develop PCOS is the hyperinsulinemia. That's really what matters, because it is the hyperinsulinemia that is driving the androgen production by the ovaries. So we obtain and we measure insulin during the glucose tolerance test to help guide our therapy. We don't give metformin to everybody. We give metformin to people who actually need it. And again, it's about 2/3 of the women we see, but not everybody. So when we shift gears into looking at metabolic syndrome, there are two principal reasons or goals, if you would, to treat metabolic syndrome. One is to treat whatever the underlying cause is. For example, having people lose weight if obesity is driving this. And the other is to treat cardiovascular risk factors if they're present. So those are the two goals, if you would, of treating metabolic syndrome. And this is a study, it's very complicated, I'm not going to go through it, except to say that these authors, and this is just published a couple of months ago, these investigators did an interesting study. They put women on a weight loss diet for eight weeks, they lost weight, and then they randomized them into 4 different treatments. They either placed them on placebo, they either placed them on exercise alone, they either put them on liraglutide, as you know, a GLP-1 agonist, or they combined exercise and liraglutide. And what they found is that the most effective means of maintaining and continuing to lose weight and continuing to improve insulin resistance in these women was the combination of exercise and liraglutide. So GLP-1s are having a role in PCOS. This is a study that we did some time back. And what this study looked at was to determine the type of diet that women with PCOS would benefit from the most. And what we found actually is that a hypoglycemic diet, even if it was eucaloric, even if it was not hypocaloric, meaning even if they were not destined to lose weight, was the best diet to improve their insulin resistance and even lose weight, despite the fact that they were actually still taking the same amount of calories. So a hypoglycemic diet did the best in our patients with PCOS, and we tend to recommend that as part of their lifestyle modification. And then when you look at metformin, we always talk about metformin, and it is not vitamin M. You know, we can't just give everybody metformin, please don't do that. But the reality is that it does appear to improve insulin resistance, of course, and the long-term risk of glucose impairment. But no study has looked at the impact of metformin on diabetes. So it's important to actually understand that we don't yet know, does metformin reduce the risk of diabetes in patients with PCOS? We think it does. We assume it does, but we don't really know. We did this study a long time ago. This is the first study of thiazolidinediones in PCOS. This is a study with troglitazone. And troglitazone was a thiazolidinedione, a TZD, that was extraordinarily effective in reducing insulin resistance in women and in women with PCOS. This is the study you can see. It's a placebo-controlled dose-ranging study. Unfortunately, troglitazone was withdrawn from the market. It had some liver impacts, some cardiac impacts, rarely, but they still had issues, and so it was drawn from the market. But today, we actually need to keep in mind that thiazolidinediones are very effective in women with PCOS. We'll talk about it in a second. This is a recent study also looking at various different medications in PCOS. And what I think is important to understand is that exenatide, again, a GLP-1 inhibitor, actually is very helpful a GLP-1 agonist is very helpful in the treatment of PCOS and in reducing weight in these patients. Finally, this is a study that came out very recently. And the interesting thing about the study is that they used a network type of analysis to determine, just with the current literature, what was perhaps best for PCOS in treating their endocrine metabolic status. And what we find is that, in fact, thiazolidinediones are probably one of the most effective drugs to use in patients with PCOS. So again, when we treat patients with PCOS, metformin is helpful, but metformin in combination with thiazolidinediones will be much more effective. All right, so one last piece of advice. As you look at patients with PCOS, remember that in your clinic, you are seeing one part of the elephant. You all know the story of the wise men, actually in India, a group of wise men in India who are blind men in India, were touching an elephant. And some of them said that the elephant really was like a snake. And some of them said that the elephant was like a tree trunk. And some of them said that the elephant was like the wall, because each one was touching a different part of the elephant. And that's what happens to us in OBGYN when we look at polycystic ovary syndrome. If you do infertility, all your patients have infertility. But you know what? A third of patients with polycystic ovary syndrome do not have infertility. If you do obesity, and if you see patients, most patients with PCOS will be obese. But the truth is that 60% of patients with PCOS are not obese, even in the United States. If you look at patients like I do, that I study hirsutism, most of the patients with PCOS will be hirsute. But in fact, only about 2/3 of patients with PCOS are hirsute. So you have to remember that what you see in your clinic is biased. And we did this study here a number of years ago looking at the impact of referral bias on PCOS. And what you find is the following. When we compared PCOS in our clinic to PCOS that we found in the population, what we found is that they were more frequently white. Remember, in the United States, there are significant differences in access to health care based on race. They were more obese, much more obese than population at large. They were more hyperandrogenemic than the population at large. So you have to remember that the reason we miss lots of patients with PCOS and we miss their diagnosis is we have assumptions. We assume that they're obese, we assume that they're hirsute, we assume that they're infertile, and in fact, there may not be any of those things at all. So, in conclusion, in most countries, 20 to 30% of the adult population has metabolic syndrome. In women, metabolic dysfunction presents most rarely as PCOS. And PCOS affects some 10 to 15% of women and is a lifelong disorder, although it's most clinically evident during the reproductive years. In PCOS, metabolic dysfunction results in impaired insulin action, most notably at the muscle and adipose tissue level. I showed you a little bit of that. And it results in hyperinsulinemia, which drives the androgen excess of the disorder. The treatment for metabolic dysfunction includes lifestyle modification, different diets, exercise, and so on, a low glycemic diet, but it also includes the use of other things, bariatric surgery, metformin, thiazolidinediones, GLP-1 agonists, and much more. The key to the treatment of patients with polycystic ovary syndrome is that you need to individualize the treatment of each of those women. It is not just a common treatment for everybody. Not everybody needs metformin, not everybody needs GLP-1 inhibitors, not everybody needs a diet. It's a combination therapy. You don't just treat them with one thing or another, right? You don't just treat them with birth control pills, you don't just treat them with anti-androgens, you use a combination of medications. So it's important to do that. So I've tried to cover a lot of ground in 45 minutes. Thank you for your attention and appreciate your being here. Thank you.
It was truly remarkable lecture. I think he deserves standing ovation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your very stimulating oration address that we had been so looking forward to. This has really been a very enriching experience for all of us. Thank you so much. At this point of time, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce Mr. Vijay Barlia, Chairman Swaran Group. He is one of India's leading industrialists who has transformed his business enterprise into one of India's first true multinationals with a significant global presence across the chemicals, plastics, and petrochemicals value chain. Known for his financial and strategic acumen, he has given an entrepreneurial edge and a unique economic and financial vision to the APJ Swaran Group. He is also leading a number of new initiatives on the international front. Well, due to unavoidable circumstances, Vijay sir is not here and has not been able to join us. So thus I would request Madam Barlia to present the shawl and memento and reflections in time, a book which is a compilation of Dr. Satyapal's most cherished quotes to Dr. Aziz as a token of our very deep appreciation to him. Thank you so much once again. So the overall goal of the IOG Awards Committee has always been to generate knowledge and evidence-based practices in the field of obs and gynae. Thus, the inclusive objective is to encourage collaborative research that expands knowledge and impacts practice. In 2017, 6 new awards were instituted to reflect the heterogeneity of our objective with cross-divisional and institutional representation. For these new awards, an independent esteemed jury was constituted for selecting the awardees. The significant accomplishments in the obs and gynae field have been extensive. Recognizing the abundance of commendable work, we've expanded the awards from 6 to 9 starting this year. We are sure that these awards will inspire the younger generation of doctors to strive for excellence in their work. I would request our chief guest, along with Madam Barlia, to kindly present these awards. The first one is the Emerging Star in Obs and Gynaecology. This award is bestowed upon a rising talent in the field who has displayed exceptional promise, outstanding contributions, and notable achievements, demonstrating the potential to become future luminary in the field. And this award, ladies and gentlemen, goes to Dr. Niharika Malhotra, consultant at Rainbow IVF and the chairperson, Foxy Young Talent Promotion Committee. She is a recipient of many prestigious awards, as well as she is also the editor and co-editor of many journals. A big round of applause for Dr. Niharika Malhotra. Congratulations. And now the next award, Excellence in Menopause Research and Services, which is being awarded to Dr. Anju Soni for her outstanding work and contribution in the field of menopause. She is head of the Department of Obs and Gynae, Soni Hospital, Jaipur. She is the General Secretary of IMS and the President-elect 24-25 of Indian Menopause Society and a recipient of many, many distinguished awards. Put your hands together for Dr. Anju Soni. And now, for excellence in infertility treatment, recipient of this award has exhibited commitment to pushing the boundaries of infertility treatment, enhancing outcomes and improving the overall reproductive health. Please put your hands together for Dr. Neena Malhotra, head of the Department of Obs and Gynae, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. She is the lead investigator in ICMR-funded projects and CSR-funded projects on nomograms for AMH and AFC in Indian women. Dr. Neena Malhotra. And next is Excellence in High-Risk Pregnancy Management. It goes to Dr. S.N. Basu for her outstanding work and contribution in the management of high-risk pregnancy. Dr. Basu is Senior Director and Head Department of Obs and Gynae, Max Super Speciality Hospital, Shalimar Bagh, Delhi, member of the Governing Board, National Board of Examinations in Medical Sciences, Government of India, and received Certificate for Excellence for Path-Breaking Reforms in the field of medical education by Government of India and Foxy Achiever Award. A big round of applause for Dr. Basu. Excellence in Minimally Invasive Gynecology is being awarded for outstanding work, research, contribution in the field of minimally invasive surgery. And coming up on stage is Dr. Geeta Chadha, a senior consultant at Indraprastha Apollo Hospitals and Apollo Cradle Royal with special interests in high-risk obs and minimally invasive surgery, recipient of Bharat Nirman Award also. Let's hear it for Dr. Chadha. The next one, ladies and gentlemen, is Excellence in Urogynecology, which is being awarded to none other than Dr. J.B. Sharma for his outstanding work and contribution in this field. This is for Excellence in Urogynecology, Dr. J.B. Sharma to receive the award. The Distinguished Chair Award is the next one. In Obs and Gynecology, it's given to someone significantly impacted and enhanced patient care, demonstrated leadership in national and international organizations, led to the development of patient-centered educational programs, which demonstrate excellence in education, has achieved national and international reputation for excellence, and provided mentorship and development to other clinicians. And for this, I request Dr. Naina Patel to please come on stage. She is Medical Director of Akanksha Hospital and Research Institute and Xavier IVF Anand, Gujarat, India. She's been practicing obstetrics and gynecologist, IVF specialist and surrogacy for over 3 decades. Her patients' abiding trust in her is reflected by the fact that she is now delivering the babies of many of the babies she delivered years ago. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Naina Patel. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce our dynamic and vibrant ISA President, Dr. Nandita Palshetkar, who will be receiving the Lifetime Achievement Award. She is a people's person and a great leader whose vision goes beyond healthcare. Her commitment to women's health is unparalleled. She has conducted various unique and impactful initiatives covering academics, collaborations, and community health initiatives with great enthusiasm and commitment. Besides this, she is also the co-founder and medical director of the Bloom IVF Group. She is also an F&B teacher, a fantastic speaker who has delivered over 85 orations, 1,000 talks, held various leadership roles. Currently, the Foxy representative to FIGO and chairperson of Indian College of Reproductive Medicine, and also been pivotal in policy-making decisions, received over 40 awards. Let's hear it for Dr. Nandita Palshetkar, please. We are giving the green certificate to Dr. Kabiri Banerjee, who was not there earlier with us. I think she's here now. I just saw her. Okay, we'll give it to her later. And now we'd like to request Madam Barlia and Dr. Ricardo Aziz to felicitate Dr. J.B. Sharma, this time for his excellent editorial services towards IOG Journal. Dr. J.B. Sharma. Can I request all the awardees who just got the Excellence Awards to kindly come on stage for a group photograph? In the words of Barack Obama, every great leader defines her vision and sets about her mission. And all these are great leaders here, eminent doctors. I request Mr. Nishan Barlia, Dr. Neha Barlia, Mr. Aditya Barlia also to please join us for this group photograph. A big round of applause for all our awardees of Excellence Awards. Thank you and congratulations. I would now like to request everyone to kindly be seated as I introduce Mr. Aditya Barlia, grandson of Dr. Satyapal and son of Mrs. Sushma Paul Barlia and Mr. Vijay Barlia. Mr. Aditya Barlia is co-promoter APG Satya and Swaran Group, Pro-Chancellor APG Satya University and Joint Secretary APJ Education. He is a young entrepreneur who balances his role in the corporate world with his philanthropic dedication to education. Presently, he is chairman, Indo-Gulf Committee, PhD Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and convener, CII, Delhi Education Committee. A graduate of Stanford University and an MBA from Harvard Business School, he has to his credit several innovative industrial and educational initiatives, including key operational roles in strategic projects of the APJ Satya Group. Mr. Aditya Barlia is an acclaimed artificial intelligence expert, sought after by business leaders worldwide. We saw his excellent presentation yesterday. He's been on a more than 65-city global tour teaching CEOs, executives, and organizations how to optimize their operations and increase productivity with AI. His intensive 11-hour AI workshop has received rare reviews for providing strategic insights and actionable tactics on implementing AI. Mr. Aditya Barlia is on a mission to democratize AI education and empower people through his work with the Vijal Institute, wherein 1 million people are being trained on AI. Mr. Aditya Barlia is a thought leader featured across major media like Forbes, The Economic Times, and CNBC for his innovative perspectives on AI. He brings deep technical knowledge combined with a gift for breaking down complex AI concepts into intuitive and results-driven frameworks. Attendees praise his engaging teaching style and ability to inspire organizations to embrace AI's immense potential. His exclusive training workshops consistently receive 5-star reviews for being an eye-opening look for the future, has been bestowed with numerous awards and accolades. Should I wind up? Okay. I now request him to propose vote of thanks.
Thank you. This is what happens when you don't use AI to, bring your introduction down to 3 to 4 lines. I know I'm standing between you and many of your flights, so I will keep my vote of thanks very short. I thought I would perhaps, have an AI song for all of you, but that might be too on the nose. First, Dr. Aziz, thank you so much for being here with us today. Not only gracing our entire celebration of my grandfather, but also the wonderful oration lecture. I'm going to take the vitamin M joke back with me, and I'll happily give credit for that. I'm also grateful for everybody in the audience. Like I said yesterday, it is wonderful that every year we almost meet together as family to celebrate some of our most amazing achievements in the obstetrics and gynecology field. And that to me is something very special. I know almost everybody in this room is used to having an impact every single day in so many patients' lives. And I just want to take a moment to share my gratitude for all the great work everybody does. I know often it isn't celebrated enough. So thank you very, very much. If your patients won't say it, I will, just in case. Last of all, my deep gratitude to all the team members who put this entire event together, members of the Walter Bushnell Foundation, the IOG committees, all our wonderful students who have been absolutely amazing and continue to inspire me every year for all their activities and work. And with that, sir, once again, thank you so much for all the hard work and contributions that you have made over the years. I highly encourage you to go and see Dr. Aziz's full biography. It would take 2 hours to introduce, but hopefully that's the homework for today. Thank you, everybody.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude with the national anthem. Kindly rise.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंग विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्चल जलधि तरंगा तव शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे जय हे जय हे जय 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 हे
Thank you once again, and please join us for lunch now. Thank you.